All right, good afternoon and welcome everybody in. Moneyline MMA returning from a week of absence, coming back from UFC 300. We've got UFC Vegas 91 on tap for everybody, and we're of course going to cover our five picks from this card in order of weight from 5 to 1, with 5 weight being the heaviest and most confident weight. All fights on this card are available for being picked. But a lot of times we do end up just picking the main event fights because they have the most recognizable fighters and typically the easiest to judge kind of one way or the other. But in general, for UFC 300, we had a great success of a night. Pretty much the only losses Jose and I had was Gaethje losing to Holloway in that devastating fashion. I did have Oliveira as well, who didn't get the win, but it was a split decision. It was real close. And in any case, Jose and I pretty much won every other pick from UFC 300. We're going to continue that hot streak coming into Vegas 91. And look, it might not be the most exciting card. A lot of people are dogging on it. I agree. Mateus Nicolau versus Alex Perez isn't the craziest main event, but hey, we're going to have some picks for you guys. And no matter how exciting the main event is, we got some money to be made here, no matter what. So speaking about making money, let's start with my 5 weight pick. My 5 weight pick's been pretty hot lately. I was able to hit it against last UFC 300 card was Bo Nichols, so I'm going to ride it a little bit less of a favorite here, but I'm going to be taking Jonathan Pierce above David Onama is my 5 weight. Jonathan Pierce is really coming off of what I thought was a really impressive performance against Joe Anderson Brito, and he doesn't get the win, but he kind of played that foolish move of like he was dominating Brito and he was doing really well, and then all of a sudden he lets Brito get up, and they like a minute later he was choked out. So Jonathan Pierce, in my opinion, is a great fighter. You know, his only losses is that fight where he lets Brito get up where he shouldn't have, and Joe Lozon, who's a legend in the UFC. I think he's going to get back strong here against David Onama. I like David Onama, but he's just not, to me, he's not enough of a specialist. I get that he's never been finished, so you got to respect him a little bit for that, right? Never having been finished. But I really do think Jonathan Pierce is a better fighter, specifically standing up too. With 9 KOs under his belt, I think he's going to be able to bring the power into this matchup. So for me, look for Jonathan Pierce to get the job done against David Onama. Jose, what do you got?
Yeah, Nick. So for this fight, right off the bat, we're going to disagree because I have David Onama and he is my 3 weight. And reason being is that, like you mentioned, dude is he's hard to finish and he himself is a finisher. He has out of his 11 wins, 7 come via KO and 4 come via submission. And I do agree, Jonathan Pierce may be the better grappler in this matchup. He's actually going to be the one who most likely will initiate the takedown. He does have a 5.21 takedown average per 3 round fight, while David Onama only has a 0.87, and his defense isn't that great either. So if Jonathan Pierce does initiate a takedown, I do expect it to go to the ground and David Onama will be taken down. But I think on the ground too, even though David Onama's, I think he does have submission skills still, and I think it'll be more than enough just for him to at least survive and get back up on his feet and look for a KO or at least coast to unanimous decision victory. And the reason is because both these guys throw a high volume of punches. Jonathan Pierce lands 5.6 significant strikes per minute, while David Onama lands 5.38. And David Onama does have a 3-inch reach advantage over Jonathan Pierce. So I think that he may, if no one gets finished within the 3 rounds, then I think David Onama may end up winning via decision based off his high volume of strikes and his reach advantage over Jonathan Pierce. But again, Pierce is it can be a whole different game plan if Jonathan Pierce just completely out wrestles David Onama and does not and does not keep it on the feet. On the feet, I have David Onama and he is my 3 weight.
Sounds good. Yeah. So we'll disagree on this one, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like a healthy disagreement. I think we both have some good points. We just will have to agree to disagree. I think in the end, Jonathan Pierce gets a finish, and if he doesn't get the finish, David Onama is going to kind of reach and try and get a finish himself and end up taking some heavy shots because of it. So we'll see what happens. Let's move on to your 5 weight.
Yes, and for my 5 weight, this is already the main event between Matus Nicolau and Alex Perez. Right now, Nicolau is the betting favorite at minus 186, while Alex Perez is the betting underdog at plus 144. Right now, Alex Perez is riding a 3-fight losing streak, which is most likely why he's the obviously the a bigger underdog. While Matus Nicolau only has a loss to Brandon Royval, and as we saw, Brandon Royval is definitely a beast, top three guy right now in the division. But that being said, he did get knocked out in the first round, midway through the first round. So, but before that, he was riding a spectacular 6-fight winning streaks, which came over the names of like Manal Kopp, Tim Elliott, and Matt Schnell. And that I think the just some of the names he's already beaten says a lot, and that's why I think he's a big favorite as well. And he has been KO'd. He has been KO'd only 3 times in his career, and that's the only method he's lost. But out of the 24 wins Alex Perez has, he's only been able to knock people out 5 times. So I don't expect Nicolau to be put to sleep by Alex Perez in this matchup, and I don't expect him to be submitted either. If anything, I think Matheus Nicolau would be the one to outstrike Alex Perez and possibly put him out cold. Even though Alex Perez has only been knocked out once out of his 8 losses, he has been submitted 5 times. Nicolau, he has 5 submissions himself, and he hasn't had a submission in a minute. He hasn't had one since 2019, and that was before he was in the UFC as well. So the UFC is a little different. I haven't seen him, get a submission quite just yet, but it could be very possible. But in the end, I think that he's going to ultimately get more strikes over Alex Perez. He's going to be the better fighter on the feet, and I think he's just going to win it. Pretty similar how I said the last fight too, either unanimous decision by strikes, or if not, he'll TKO him. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
So we're going to agree on this one. I have a 4-weight on Nicolau, and really kind of what held me from just making him the 5-weight is a little bit of respect for Alex Perez. I think he deserves some respect. He hasn't won a fight since 2020, I understand. But I really was pretty impressed by his performance again against Mokaev. I think he really could have swayed the judges. I know it was a unanimous loss, but Mokaev was really just kind of grinding the wrestling, and I was impressed by Alex Perez. He wasn't the kind to just lay on his back. He got up and scrambled really well. And I honestly think Perez, if he just let his hands go more, he would have really been able to at least make a point to get a vote against Mokaev, because I don't think Mokaev was necessarily just like wrestling him into oblivion at all. So some of it's like my respect for Alex Perez and thinking, well, that was him off of like years of layoff, right? How much better could he be that he hasn't like been so long since he's fought? It's only been a couple of months, right? So in fact, 1 month. It was March 2nd. So by the time this fight occurs, it won't even have been 2 months since he fought. He's been in great shape the whole time. So those things just kind of lead me to being a little less confident in Nicolau. But of course, nothing to say that I'm not confident at all, because he still is my 4-weight, and I agree with everything you said. In the end, Nicolau is very dangerous, but he's never lost the decision. So even if the fight goes a while, because Perez is not an easy guy to take down, put out, right? Nicolau doesn't lose decisions either. So definitely really confident there.
Yep. Yeah. So there you guys have it. Both Nick and I, we feel extremely strong about Matus Nicolau. I just obviously slightly more, but in the end, this will probably be our pick of the week. Would probably be Nicolau, just given how high he is. And that being said, we can move on to the next fight, which will be my 4-weight. And this actually also happens to be the co-main event of the night. This is the light heavyweight bout between Ryan Spann and Bogdan Guskov. Right now, Ryan Spann is the betting favorite at minus 205, while Guskov is the betting underdog at plus 158. This one, even though Ryan Spann is coming off a 2-fight losing streak, I think he should get the win. He did come off a split decision loss to Anthony Smith. And right now, Anthony Smith, he's a hot or cold type of guy. If he shows up, he's going to be, he's at championship level and beating big names, or he's just completely, wetting the bed and just looking, like he doesn't even belong in there with whoever he's fighting with. And on the other hand, Guskov, he's only been in the UFC twice, and his UFC debut, Volkan Ozdemir, that's a big day, it's a big UFC debut. So losing to him, No shame in there. He did lose by submission, and Volkan Ozdemir mostly is like a he's known for more as like his boxing and his power. So that kind of just that does stick out to me. And while because Ryan Spann does have 12 submission wins on his record, out of his 21 wins, 12 of them come via submission. And not only that, then he did get a win over Zach Pauga in the first round. But Pauga as well, you know, he's not been doing so hot in the UFC. He's only won one against Jordan Wright. So I think Ryan Spann should be the one to get this win, even though again he's losing to Nikita Krylov and Anthony Smith. Those are some bigger names, and he does have before that wins a first round KO over Dominic Reyes and Ian Kudalaba. So you know, I do see it that this is a fight Ryan Spann needs to win. He does have the power. I see why he's the favorite. He has a 3-inch reach advantage over Guskov as well. So I do think he's going to be getting the better end of the exchanges on this. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Seems like we'll have another disagreement here, but I'm a little less confident. I am picking Bogdan with my number 2 weight pick, so slightly less confident. And of course, for pretty much the reasons you bring up about the wrestling slash grappling disadvantage, I think he's got, of course, Ryan Spann's at least gotten the ability to prove it, like against Ion Kulaba, of course, submitting him via guillotine choke. So there is some of a point there, but I don't think Ryan Spann is honestly going to lean towards his wrestling. I think he's going to feel like his size in the ring is just going to be what he needs to win here. It's kind of the reason he's gotten. I mean, Nikita Krylov is a beast, no doubt about it, but Anthony Smith's pretty washed up. And it was a split decision loss, sure, but Anthony Smith completely outstruck Ryan Spann pretty significantly. And that's one of the things I was looking at here when I picked Bogdan, is just because I haven't been impressed by Ryan Spann's ability to output many strikes in his fights. It seems like if he doesn't get a finish via strikes or submission early on, like his last 2 wins, he didn't even land 10 strikes before he won the fight. So I'm thinking if he doesn't get Bogdan out early, he's got a chance to get knocked by Bogdan himself. And I understand there's a size disadvantage here, but it's not as significant, I feel like, as Ryan Spann has had against some of his opponents. Bogdan's still 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. It's not going to be like David versus Goliath here by any means. And I think Bogdan carries a lot of power, and all he's got to do is just catch Ryan Spann once. And I could see that happening for sure. So less confident than my 4-weight, 2-weight on Bogdan.
Yeah, fair enough. And it is true. Yeah, he can catch Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann has been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted 3 times, and he's lost decision 3 times. So yeah, I agree with you on that. That being said, I this is definitely one we're gonna have to agree to disagree on. I feel strong about Ryan Spann to my 4-weight, and you're going with Guskov, but you're not as confident. But he is your 2-weight.
Yeah, and I
And
do.
that be,
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, as we go into my 3-weight pick here, that will be partially because of that value in that Bogdan is the dog, and I just like him in that dog spot.
no, yeah,
Plus
that's
158.
that's a especially at light heavyweight. That is a good dog spot for sure.
So, but yeah, that being said, my 3-weight's going to be on the female feature fight of the night, the women's flyweight bout between Ariane Lipski and Karine Silva. I'm going with Silva here, straight out front. She's my 3-weight. I'm pretty confident in Silva getting this job done. She's not lost yet in the UFC, and Lipski's been showing some promise, showing some improvement. I think that's part of why the line on this isn't really that wide. Karine Silva is a minus 146 favorite, and Lipski is a plus 114 dog. That is a very slight dog, and you can give her the respect for having 3 straight wins in a row, and especially a submission against Casey O'Neill. I mean, Casey O'Neill's supposed to be a prospect, blah, blah, blah. Okay, right. But she's now lost 2 fights in a row, so who even knows what Casey O'Neill really has? And I think no matter what, right, Lipski can submit Casey O'Neill all she wants. She's not submitting Karine Silva. It's not going to happen. Silva will get on. Like, if Silva gets on Lipski on the ground, it's over. It's going to be like Aljamain Sterling on Sean O'Malley's back. Like, it just wouldn't even be. It's just. There's just a very big difference there, in my opinion, with Silva on the ground. And in striking, I'm not seeing enough, in my opinion, in Lipski's favor to be like, yeah, she'll knock out Silva. I don't think that's going to happen by any means. I think Silva's going to do a good job at kind of working in striking. I honestly think this fight for sure gets out of the first round. I would not be betting this fight to end that early because I think Silva's going to have to slowly work in her takedowns. Lipski does have a good takedown defense, but I'm going to quit rambling because I don't have too much time for this show, and I'm picking the slight favorite here, Karine Silva. What do you got, Jose?
Yeah, Nick, I'm gonna agree with you as well. I have Karine Silva as well. She is my two weight, and like you said, I don't think Ariane Lipski is gonna be do too much damage when it comes to the grappling department. I think Silva definitely has this, and on the feet, it's definitely going to be a closer fight on the feet. But even then, I think Silva, she's like a pretty well balanced fighter. She has out of her 17 wins, 9 KOs and 8 submissions. So even on the feet, I would still say Silva could possibly put out Ariane Lipski as well. I think she can take her out whether either on the feet or by submission. Lipski has never been submitted before, but just given the grappling skills Silva has, I would not doubt that this could be Lipski's first loss as well to via submission. So, but it is. I have not seen Silva as much in the UFC compared to Ariane Lipski, so that does kind of hinder my confidence level, and that's why she is my two weight. But that being said, overall, I agree with you. I think Silva will get this win, and yeah, I agree with you on Silva taking the W, and she's my two weight.
Okay. Sounds good. That might be the second best bet of the week then for Moneyline, given the 5 combined weight there. And we can move on then. We've covered all of our weights then, so I guess it's my 2 weight would be next technically in terms of high weights. We've covered all of our other weights through that. So my 2 weight is going to be Bogdan.
Oh, hey, Nick, I think you're muted.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was muted on the Discord side, but not the stream side. But I was pretty much just saying that we've gotten through everything besides my 2 weight. We've covered all the way through your 2 weight. So I'm gonna go through my 2 weight, which is going to be Bogdan Guskov, the light heavyweight. No, we did discuss that already. So no, let me just hold on. Let me get my thoughts together. So then we're on our 1 weights, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, sweet. So then in that case, quick 1 weights, and this is actually still going to be 2 more fights for you guys because there are 6 fights on the main event, and I do believe Jose and I have differing picks here for our last fights. So with my 1 weight at least, I'm going to go with Uros Medic. Fighting Tim Means, this fight will currently at least be opening the main card, and no doubt about it, I have a lot of respect for Tim Means. I didn't make this pick lightly. Of course, it's why he's my 1 weight. Tim Means is the dirty bird for a reason. He's a guy that's really hard to take out, I should say, like finish. And he's good in all areas of the game. Of course, Uros Medic is very finish heavy. He's never gone to a decision, but he has only 11 career professional MMA fights. Both of his losses to this point, though, are by submission, and that's why a lot of people are also favoring Tim Means, because Tim Means has gotten 5 submission wins under his belt. He's shown the ability to make takedowns a part of his game with over 1 takedown average per fight. I just don't think he's going to be able to utilize it against Uros Medic because he's going to be getting spanked in the striking game. Uros has either been submitted or finished his opponent by KO. And look, I think at some point a man's chin fades. Tim Means is 40 years old. I think he's gonna feel the power here, and I think he's gonna struggle to keep his lights on. So 1 weight, Uros Medic.
Yeah,
Jose,
Nick.
any opinions?
Yeah. So this was actually a tough one for me to judge. So that's why it's one that I didn't really rank.
Okay.
But I will say I do agree with you. I think Euros should get this win. Tim Means though, he is a big underdog, and he is coming off that win over Andre Fialho, but Fialho's just not been looking that good, and Tim Means really needed that win. That being said, I agree with you. He's 40 years old, chins fade, and Euros is only 30 years old, and I think he, out of his 9 wins, 7 KOs, I do think he can be live for it. He's not young, but definitely a lot younger than Tim Means, and I think his youth will definitely show in that fight. And that being said, I wouldn't expect. Yeah, I would expect him to get the W on that one. So I agree with you on that pick, Nick. And that
Okay.
being said,
Yeah,
and then that being
sounds good.
said, I can move on to my weight,
Yep.
my 1 weight, and this is the heavyweight bout between Austin Lane and Jonah Denise. Right now, Austin Lane is the betting underdog at plus 196, while Jonah Denise is the betting favorite at minus 260. I've seen Austin Lane come in and out of the UFC, seen his stunts with the what they know as Contender Series because he's a Wisconsin boy. He's from Wisconsin and always kept a close eye on him. And he's a former NFL player. He's an athletic guy, but the thing is, he is already 36 years old and he does not have a chin. If you can recall, way back in the day, he did get knocked out in the first round by Greg Hardy, and who Greg Hardy's not even in the UFC anymore. And he has gone on to beat other names, but not really big names. He hasn't really beaten anyone too impressive yet. And he just came off another first round loss to Justin Tafa. And that's the thing about Austin Lane. When he gets knocked out, it's always in the first round. All his losses are knockouts, and they're within the first round. So Denise, I think if he wants to get this win, he needs to make it an early night and try to get a first round KO, which is his entire resume. All his fights are first round wins via KO/TKO. So he may come in high and try to look for that fire shot. And so that being said, I would think, I mean, who knows? Maybe Austin Lane will survive and get out the first round, but I wouldn't be surprised seeing Denise getting another first round KO against a guy who's notoriously just been losing 2 first rounds, no matter how many years apart they are. It's not even like consecutively. It's like 3 years down the road, gets knocked out again first round. And but this is see where Denise really belongs, because he does have just one fight in the Dana White's Contender Series, and the rest are just outside the UFC. So we will see his true test come here against Austin Lane. But I expect nothing short of it to be fireworks, and for him to just get that first round win. Austin Lane is a big guy. He is a big guy, but not over like overwhelmingly big. He's 6'6". Jonathan Diaz is 6'4", and both are in Austin Lane is 30. Again, he is 36. His age is kind of up there. He doesn't have a good chin. I feel good about Jonah Denise getting the win, but because it is his official UFC debut, not being Dana White's Contender Series, that is why he is my one weight. Do you have any thoughts on this fight, Nick?
So I didn't have official pick, obviously. My thoughts mainly is that I stayed away because it's heavyweights, and with guys like Vitor Walker, for example, Johnny Walker's big brother, who was like a minus ridiculous hundreds and hundreds of favorite and loses. He could, like, someone explained it as like he couldn't even go and get the groceries from the car and not be exhausted. Like, it's just like sometimes when you get these guys from other organizations that have just walked through, it's like boxing, right? You just get these opponents that are just like punching bags, and if you're anything above average, you kill them easily. And of course not, you knock them out real quick is what I'm saying. But regardless, Jonathan Denise has had the privilege of fighting those kinds of guys, and I'm taking a little reserve here and saying he could be good, but this is UFC. So I want to see him do something. If he goes in there and KOs Austin Lane in the first 30 seconds, I'm still hesitant because Austin Lane isn't that good in my opinion. And if he fights anybody with somewhat of a chin, yikes. Right? So Denise is still a fadeable guy until I see him last a little bit and show some durability. Don't think that's going to be against Austin Lane. So I would agree with picking Denise. I don't like it because of the UFC debut part.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nick. Yeah, and that's exactly why it falls under the one weight category. Heavyweights are always a risky bet, and as you mentioned, Johnny Walker's brother, major flop. I had him, and I'm done. And not even to mention Almeida too. These heavyweights have been disappointing me at times. So that being said, yep, I got Jonah Denise as my one weight.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate everybody for showing up. It was a pretty brief show, but both got some stuff going on this week. And honestly, it's like I was saying, kind of an underwhelming card overall. There should be some good fights and spots to win money, as we explained. So definitely consider betting on Mateus Nicolau and or Karine Silva. Maybe do a little 2-leg parlay there, because those would be Moneyline MMA's best picks of the week. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Of course, there's going to be an early pay-per-view in May, the first Saturday in May. Will be Alexander Pantoja defending his belt, and that'll be a good fight, a good card in general. So we will be back for a much more in-depth and longer show next week, Monday, for that pay-per-view. So tune in and have a great week.